Welcome, everybody, to Playback. My name is Brandon.
My name is Nate.
And this is the show where music producers take turns picking albums to talk about. This week is week number 3 of Reggae Summer.
Reggae Summer.
Yes. And so this was your pick this week, Nate.
Yes.
Super excited to get into this one.
Me too, man.
Nate picked Culture, 2/7's Clash.
I did.
A classic, a very venerated album, one that even people who are only like sort of into reggae know this one. You know, this is like a super, super popular one.
I think so, yeah.
Nate, let's get it started. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. Qu'est-ce que c'est? KS. What is 2/7's Clash? Why did you pick it? And so on.
So 2/7's Clash, like Brandon said, is probably one of the more famous roots reggae albums of all time. Highly venerated, like Brandon said. To kind of add to what you're saying, one of the only, I think Rolling Stone put out I think it was like the coolest albums of all time. The coolest albums, the best, the coolest albums of all time.
Oh, this is interesting.
And it was the only standalone reggae album to make the cut. So I think in like hip circles, in alternative circles, in rock circles, in kind of the crossover like white rock world, this is like a very highly venerated album. It's a very roots Rasta centric album, very religious, very apocalyptic, very prophetic, which we're going to get into all that stuff later. The main kind of themes of this album are all about an apocalyptic prophecy that a man named Marcus Garvey made sometime in the 20s, I believe. So the rumor, the myth is, and I can't find any way to corroborate this, and I don't know if anybody ever could, but the myth goes, but this is something that people love to say about this album, is that on the day of July 7th, 1977, like all of Kingston and Jamaica was basically like a ghost town. Like people like avoided going outside. They avoided like doing things they would normally do that day because that was supposed to be the day when the apocalypse, the uprising, yeah, when basically like this apocalyptic kind of uprising was supposed to happen. So it kind of vaulted Culture and Joseph Hill into like a really like insanely popular kind of status in Jamaica and around the world eventually. But like the way I came to this album personally, and I love that we get to talk about this album because for me personally, this album is the best way for me to explain my relationship with reggae. Like how I see myself as not just a producer of reggae and a musician who plays reggae, but also as just like a reggae fan, right?
Like how so?
One of my favorite things that happened in the 70s was there were these two extremely disparate, at least on paper, very disparate genres of music, and with their own sets of counterculture and their own sets of ideologies that actually came together in the 70s around the time when this came out. And I think this album was like a huge reason why. They came together and they kind of realized all the things they actually have in common. And they have been basically inextricable ever since. And I'm talking about the Rastas, who we've been talking about a bunch on this series.
Yep.
And the punks.
Yep.
The punks in the 70s and the Rastas, they loved each other's music. They were huge fans of each other. Bob Marley, early in the 70s, he wrote a song called Punky Reggae Party, and I think is paying light reference to punks. And then this album, in particular, 2/7's Clash, was like a huge influence on Joe Strummer, who started a band called The Clash, and I have to believe that this could have had something to do with that. Although I don't know.
Never thought about that. Yeah, does the name of the band come from?
I did.
They were already named The Clash before 77, though, right?
Well, that's about when they started. Was about 76. So like this.
Were
and
they
I think,
named after this album?
I actually don't know. But like I know that Joe Strummer loved this record Johnny Rotten, loved this record. Huge influence on like Public Image Limited, which is one of my favorite like alternative like new wave bands. The way I see my relationship to reggae music is I'm one of those punks. That is how I see myself as like a reggae fan and as like a reggae producer and musician. Is like when I was a kid, Joe Strummer was my idol. Like I don't think I loved any musician or I didn't take after anyone more strongly than Joe Strummer. So for my love of punk to coincide with this love of reggae that I had at the same time, and then to find out that, oh my God, my punk idols actually were like buddies and friends with my reggae idols, all it did was just like reinforce this feeling that like, no, I'm in the right place. I'm doing the right thing. I'm making the right kind of music. Like
Who I am actually does make sense.
It does make sense.
Yeah.
It isn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like I kind of had that like epiphany like while we were listening to this record. While I was listening to this record this week, was just like, that is kind of how I approach like reggae and reggae as like a fan and as like a producer. Is like, I'm not like some authentic, Jamaican, obviously. I'm not like the most authentic person ever to be making.
Listen to us talk. Listen to our voices.
Yeah. But I do see my fandom and my role as something that has like a lineage to it in this music scene. And I kind of love that. It's
really cool, that personal connection that you have to it, and I know what you mean in terms of that, like, you can kind of come to understand your own place in this musical world, like later in life, rather than like at the time. Because long time listeners, long time supporters of Black Market Dub and of this show will know that Nate and I grew up in the same small town in California. And I feel that part of what comes with coming from a small town is it's a little bit different than a lot of these stories and autobiographical accountings that you'll hear from musicians and from people who grew up in really big cities. People who grew up in LA or New York or London or something, where they can remember being there at the time and being part of the movement, and this is what it was like, this is what we were doing. The people who hung out at CBGB and everything, is different for us.
Yeah.
Right?
We had to really go search for it.
Yeah, and we can end up, because none of that is happening in tiny Atascadero, California. And we can end up being sort of like a disciple of something and end up in a lineage of an artistic movement without really being conscious of that we are.
Yeah.
Until later, when we realize, holy crap, my entire freaking life is determined because I followed the guidelines of this scene or something. And I can really relate to that, because I was interested in punk music before I was interested in reggae. Mm-hmm. And it really seemed like in that small town to be into reggae made no sense and was completely out of left field. Yeah. And I just was, because I was weird. But later on it's like, no, there's a whole shared experience of people all over the world who find this music.
Yeah. And if you think about punks and Rastas, like on paper, or even if you just like kind of judge the book by its cover kind of thing, you're like, what do these two how could these two groups possibly ever overlap? But I mean, they're both like, really think about all the things they have in common. One, the biggest one, they're like making this like outsider art, basically. They're both like super anti-fascist, anti-racist movements. Both very much exist on like the fringes of their society, especially at the time. Both very like open about, drug use and weed and like all these kind of things that like polite society is like not okay with, right? And to me, it's like, it's one of the most like beautiful marriages of of cultures that has ever happened, and it's like entirely because of music. And then what you get out of it is it birthed like the two-tone like scene out of London and the UK and stuff. And you got bands like the Specials and shit like that. Like
they were both movements of young people, right? Reggae in terms of coming from a society that was predominantly black, punk coming out of a society that's predominantly white. But like you say, they're young people both rebelling and casting off the apparatus of Western society, right? The Rastas called it Babylon. The punks didn't call it Babylon, but arose by any other name. Right?
The punks just said "fuck you."
Right. This entire this system, the way that this government, the way that this way of life, the way that the way that this society is set up, fuck this, right? Which is just that exact same refusal to participate in Babylon, just said in different words, right? And another really, really, really big factor is that two of the largest communities of these young people involved in these movements at the exact same time were both living in London.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. So, and like you said, they're both, one of the concepts that was closest to their heart is anti-racism. So, man, they hung out together. They went to each other's shows and they played the same shows, playing different music right next to each other. It's amazing. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Easily before like a Sex Pistols show, wouldn't surprise me if at the time there was like a dub, DJ like spinning before the show, and that like would not have been out of place at a punk show at all in London in the 70s. Like that would have been like, and everyone there would have been fucking way into it too.
Also, really big Jamaican expatriate populations in New York City,
big time, yeah.
DC, Toronto. Yeah.
I mean, you saw from both of these movements there was essentially like cross pollination. Like the Clash went to Jamaica to record, and we've already talked about how many Jamaicans made their way to places like London or New York or wherever. And it's really cool. And like, I think it's like kind of one of the like, undergirding like pillars of like a lot of our modern music is that you have this like super energetic, kind of top surface level of punk, but with this like very intense, like danceability of like dub and reggae that like kind of undergirds a lot of it. Like it's all right there, man.
And it's amazing how the connection between those two styles of music even exists way down into the offshoots, like because we're now at the point where we're decades and decades past the original scenes of both of them and the original like stylistic versions of both of them, but the connection still exists. I mean, even in Los Angeles, in like the 2010s, right? I used to play in reggae bands and backyard shows with like East LA Latino kids with their punk rock shows. And we would play reggae there. We're not Jamaican. They're not white punks. Like both of our things are like many steps of inspiration away from the original. And we didn't even like know or understand the lineage of our music that we were playing enough to like even understand like the history of them being connected. But we were.
You all have the same like musical grandparents, essentially.
But it's powerful because that connection is even there, even when you're not consciously aware of the history.
I don't know how you feel about this, but like I do feel like I can't quite put my finger on what it is about 2/7's Clash in particular that makes it more accessible to like a punk rock minded ear than a lot of other roots reggae, because to me it does. And I don't know if that's just because I've always associated it with the Clash and stuff like that, but I do kind of think there's something in the music that it does have kind of this like really raw punk rock edge to it, even though it's a reggae band.
Right. There's no distortion. There's no distorted guitars. the clavinet is a bit distorted on this, but there's no distorted guitars. Last episode we were talking about Night Nurse by Gregory Isaacs, right?
Yeah.
One of the like most stately, presentable, and clean as fuck vibe album ever, right? And we talked about how that the musicians performed that music possibly in one day.
Yes.
Right? So that's sort of like by like punk rock standards, you know, like a DIY thing. Like you just go into the studio and you just bam, play your songs, 1 or 2 takes, bam, that's it, right?
Yeah.
It just so happens that the Roots Radix are so freaking clean and so in control of what they're playing that they did do exactly that, but it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like they really took their time and got everything perfect. It's just that they're capable of getting everything perfect in one try.
Right.
But 2/7's Clash it feels like it was made in one day.
It does.
Like, it just feels like you just put one microphone in, just snuck it into a room full of musicians that didn't even realize that they were being recorded.
Yeah.
And they're just freaking exploring the room and like, it's so live.
There's so much energy to it. Like
expression. They're wild.
Yeah, they are.
Like 2/7's Clash has a quality of being wild and out of control that is not. It stands in very stark opposition to what you hear on Night Nurse and Exodus.
I agree. Yeah, I completely agree with you. And like another thing that I have to point out too is that this is the first album we've reviewed in this series that was recorded in Kingston, right? So this is the first album where I think you get a little bit of that true Jamaican stank on this music.
That's such a good point. I didn't realize that. Right, because Exodus was recorded in
London.
Night Nurse was recorded in the Bahamas. Yeah, this is the first one we're talking about that was recorded in Jamaica. Okay.
So you might say like, oh, well, you know, they're all Jamaican musicians. What's the big deal? It's like, dude, the studios in Jamaica are so different. This is all that like kind of murky sound we've been kind of mentioning a lot throughout this series. This is what we're talking about.
Yeah, it is.
This is that kind of murky, almost kind of phasery, very
like there's a blanket over the music.
Yes, but like, you know, we say that with love. Like that's kind of one of the cool things about it is it has this murky, almost underwater sometimes. This one less so. This one has like a very like electric kind of feel to it. I'd almost compare it to like Blonde on Blonde in a way. That's another like very live album that is very like just everyone's just like fucking ripping on their instruments. They're just tearing through the songs like at like a breakneck pace.
Yeah, because this album has synthesizers to an extent that is not normal. It's sort of special, sort of rare. You know, most
the band is huge. The band is like huge on this record. If you think about it,
there's a much larger ensemble of musicians on this album than is normal for roots reggae albums of the time. And yeah, for roots reggae albums of this era, if there are synths, it's usually just sort of here and there on 1 or 2 songs just to like play a lead part. Not like used throughout and like doing like rhythmic parts, you know, like
it's very often carrying like all the counter melodies.
Yeah, and like get ready to ride the lion to Zion, you know, that part, the ping-tum, 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 ping-tum. It's like it's part of the drums in there. Very, 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 very unusual. But super rootsy and that murky style nonetheless.
And not out of place at all. Like it's the synths are used in a very organic way. it sounds like something that has like always been part of the fabric of this music, even though I think it is kind of novel for a record that was recorded in like 76 to have this much synthesizer on it. But I agree, and it's interesting because of all the other musical options that you have available to you through this ensemble that would more often be used as like the counter voice, right? Like you have a horn section on this, right? You have multiple guitars, you have organ, you have piano, you have all this stuff. And not to say they aren't used, because those are all over the place too.
All those people are playing constantly.
Yeah. It's wild, man. It is a wild record. I know you're not familiar with Raw Power, but I really think that like mix wise, it reminds me a little bit of Raw Power in that it's just like very hot and very like energetic mix. And even like playing wise, yeah, it's just that Raw Power was like a 4-piece punk band, and this is like a 12, 14, 15 piece band.
How many musicians are playing?
Like
16 people in this band.
16
on
people.
This record.
Yeah.
Okay, that's 4 horns, 1 percussion, 3 keyboards, 3 guitars.
Yep.
When was the last time you heard a band with 3 guitarists?
Drums, bass, and then a vocal trio.
And 3 singers.
Yeah.
Culture, that name does not mean the band. When we're talking about culture and who that is, that's not those 16 musicians.
No.
So if you listen to the past couple episodes, we've talked about the way that the music industry in Jamaica worked mainly on session players, right? Recording one day at a recording studio, playing for whatever singers came in, just like how Motown did or whatever. That's what this is.
That's exactly what this record is. That's like
exactly what this is. Yeah.
The Joe Gibbs. I don't even know what he called them, but like the Joe Gibbs, like All Stars.
They were called the Professionals.
The Professionals. There you go.
And so culture is the singers.
Yes.
These 3 guys: Joseph Hill, Albert Walker, Kenneth Days. Joseph Hill is the lead singer, the main guy, the lead singer on every song, the guy who wrote all these lyrics. And then Albert Walker and Kenneth Days are the 2 backup singers. So it's those 3 guys. That is who culture is.
Right.
And the rest are session players. Which
is like a very, in Jamaica at the time, that was like a common thing. You had like
totally normal.
And that was how it worked, not just in culture, but like the Heptones. Gosh, even think about it. Even the Wailers in the 60s, it was Bob, Peter, and Bunny.
You got the Paragons. You have the Gay Lads. You have Justin Hines and the Dominoes. You have the Ethiopians.
Oh, the Ethiopians are great.
The
Meditations, I think. They're really great.
The Uniques.
Mm-hmm. God, Toots and the Maytals, probably,
Toots and
right?
The Maytals.
Yeah, they were a vocal trio.
And then now here in the roots reggae era, you've got, oh my gosh, so many. You have like the Mighty Diamonds, Wailing Souls, the Abyssinians, the Gladiators, Israel Vibration. Everybody who I just mentioned, they're all trios. 3 male singers. Some of them would take turns being the lead, right? Some of them, like in the case of like the Heptones, the Gladiators, and Mighty Diamonds, Wailing Souls, they would each, like write their own songs and sing lead on their own songs. So it's sort of like a Lennon-McCartney situation. But Culture is an example of one where it was like Joseph Hill
was the guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't mistake us for saying this sounds like the mix is hot and the band is wild. It sounds unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like
these are all
so
desirable qualities. Right? When you're talking about this golden era of the Jamaican music industry, right? Like from the mid '60s to the early '80s, in my opinion, that's the stuff that I like. These qualities of we got to come up with a different word than murkiness, because we keep coming back to that, but
and it's not even the most accurate way to describe it, I feel like, either.
And it also really is a thing that it's like a comparative thing, right? because, like, we're American. These recordings, these master tapes, these mixes, they sound distorted, out of balance, and quote unquote incorrect by the standards of American records. Right?
Yes, great point.
So they have their own standard of what they're supposed to sound like. And they sound very different from what we are used to, from what we grew up listening to. But everything that we're saying about these, how hot the mix is, and how like sharp in certain ways and rounded off in other ways that you wouldn't expect, these are all like really desirable qualities. This is what makes this music like dope as hell and beloved by the people who love it.
Yeah, it's true.
And this is the first record so far in our Reggae Summer that we're getting into that has this sound. So, we talked about Exodus and Night Nurse, which are two like examples of something that is very pristine and that was easier for the international market to take in. So now we're delving into the sounds of
Jamaica.
And what the locals liked and what the locals listened to. And so, for those of you who are listening, who are sort of delving into this world of music here, like now, this is what we're getting into now, this is what the majority of the recordings sound like.
It doesn't surprise me at all that like punk rockers in London heard this stuff and they're just like, oh yeah, this is awesome. This sounds great. It sounds like the punk records. Like the punk records have all the same qualities, man. They're like, they're sharp in a lot of instances, they're rounded off in others, but like they can sound like kind of to the untrained ear, they might sound a little like, or to the unaccustomed, they might sound
that's like, a better unaccustomed ear. They
might sound like almost a little thin or sharp or just kind of angular on the top end a little bit. But it's like, that's kind of where like a lot of the energy and like excitement lives of the music as well. I don't know. It's a very, very powerful record sonically that I think was only matched by its lyrical message. I see a lot of the same things in our society that were bubbling up that were much more overt in Jamaican society at that time, but that are starting to bubble up here that like basically inevitably led to an album like this, right? You have deep uncertainty in surrounding like the political situation, surrounding people's basic human rights, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times what that can breed is, on one end, authoritarianism, right? Which is what we're seeing in the United States right now. And sometimes on the other end, you can see like very like suspicious, paranoid thinking, which was the pervasive mood in Jamaica at the time during the lead up to this coming out. Because basically, when this album was coming out, or when this album was leading up to that July 7th date, this caused like a lot of nervous energy, but it was also like, this album was rightfully pointing out that like, if the police, come at us with guns or batons or whatever, like we're going to stand tall and we're going to stand against this kind of oppression and this kind of like, we're here, we're standing, and we're waiting for this event to come to pass because the day of judgment for these horrible people is coming, right? And it really strikes me that like we're living in a really similar moment as that here in the United States, where it's like people are like getting rounded up and like thrown in jail for no reason right now.
Yeah, the preamble is similar.
It's very similar.
Like time will tell if things play out in a similar way. Yeah. But there's a similar lead up for sure.
A lot of the philosophy that kind of underpins this record is a guy named Marcus Garvey, who basically he prophesized something in the early 1920s that there would be this apocalyptic event. And normally, as someone who is extremely agnostic, I would not describe myself as like a spiritual person or a suspicious or paranoid person. By complete accident, this episode is coming out on July 7th.
Yes.
Is coming out on the anniversary of this.
The two sevens clash, meaning the 7th day of the 7th month of the 77th year, right?
Yeah.
And we planned what weeks are we going to talk about the reggae albums? What reggae albums are we going to talk about in what order? We picked all that and didn't realize until like a few days ago that
literally
Two Sevens Clash is going to come out on July 7th. So Marcus Garvey, big topic. So this is, in the past couple episodes, we've sort of talked about how we're going to kind of like pepper in some important ideas, some important topics from the broader topic of Rastafari.
Yeah.
Right?
So some philosophies that are important to be aware of when you listen to reggae music from this time period, or really any time period since this too. And also some important figures, some people who are important. And I think that you would agree, like Marcus Garvey is probably second only to Bob Marley when you're talking about like the most influential Jamaicans ever. In my opinion, I think only Bob Marley is more like influential than Marcus Garvey. And
even then, it's probably close to a tie.
Yeah, probably.
Honestly, like when you consider what the world was like before Marcus Garvey.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think in terms of who is more famous right now? Bob Marley by far.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of if you compare the world before they did their work to what the world is like after they did their work, I think Marcus Garvey takes that.
I think we should go over who is Marcus Garvey, what did he do, and why is he important to Rastafarian culture, and as it pertains to Two Sevens Clash.
To Two Sevens Clash, right? Yeah. Wait, we're talking about this because this is like something that will allow you to like really kind of
understand the
all
album.
this music, this album, and just roots reggae in general. Yeah,
he was born in Jamaica, and basically he was someone who kind of from a very like early age like recognized. And I think this is why I think Garvey would get a lot of play today if he was around today. He was just front running basically a lot of like ideologies that we see that are everywhere now, right? They're very popular now, but they're popular now because of him, probably, because of him and people like him,
Right.
But he basically when he visited the United States and I think saw the conditions that African Americans were living in the United States, like Jim Crow and how horrible life was for Black people in the United States at that time. I think he was radicalized by that experience and started an organization for the improvement of Black people worldwide. Right? He saw the suffering of Black people as a global issue, right?
Yeah.
As something that could unite Black people around the world. There was an African diaspora, and in his mind, Africans around the world had no king, they had no leader, they had no central figure, and they had no central place where they could basically carve out their own destiny and carve out their own place in the world.
All other groups of people have a country and a flag, and we don't, you know? Yeah.
Even though they have a huge continent, right? I mean, Africa's a gigantic place, probably one of the more mineral-rich, like resource-rich places on the planet. And because of things like European colonialism, where they basically just went in and just arbitrarily carved up Africa, so that it would always be a place where Africans could be taken advantage of, right?
Yeah.
For the purposes of mining their resources, so European and white people around the world could, mine their resources and stuff like this. There was that, but there was also the issue of just that Black people have been displaced all over the world, and in all these places they've been displaced, they're being they've either been treated horribly, either from slavery, historically, or even in places where there's no longer slavery, there's still Jim Crow, where there's just this horrible oppression happening, and Black people are treated like second-class citizens, right? So I think he sought to rectify that.
Yeah, because when he was young, so he was young, like in the 19-teens.
Yeah.
Right. And his travels, he went to more places than just America.
Yeah, it's true.
Right. He also went throughout the Caribbean and throughout Central America. So he visited basically like all of the, well, not all, but throughout the part of the world that were the destinations of the Atlantic slave trade. All the places where the slaves were brought to hundreds of years ago and were now living. What the commonality that he noticed in his travels was that they're always the bottom rung of society.
Yeah.
They're always the most numerous, and they're always the least
empowered.
The least empowered and the least taken care of, right? And the most taken advantage of. And like you said, the thing that he identified as like the most central thing keeping these circumstances in place is a lack of unification, a lack of connectedness between each one of these groups of people. Right? There were just a bunch of people being taken advantage of in isolation and no connection between each group. So Marcus Garvey's like primary legacy of all of his work that he did, he's one of the main figures, if not the biggest figure in history of his work is why there is a thing that exists in the world today, which is a positive and unified Black identity.
Yes.
That's a thing.
Yeah.
And it is. It absolutely is. You look in the world around you now, every slogan, every motto, everything that exists in every household, in every Black community, the concept of a great and beautiful and powerful and wealthy connection to a Black past and history and an optimistic Black future and one that's unified and everything. That's like,
yeah,
that exists because of his work. Basically.
Yeah, he has a famous quote. I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's basically like a culture that doesn't like recognize and remember its own history and past is like a tree without roots, right? So his goal was to get Africans around the world to recognize and be empowered by their Africanness, by their African heritage. Like
specifically,
don't look at yourself as a New Yorker or an American, even like or do I guess, but recognize.
I think you're right about that, and I think that is what made him such a target to the American government, is because he did specifically say, like fuck being American. You're not American. Like you're Black, and the government was like, what?
Yeah. Like I think the easiest way to maybe understand like his role in especially like American society, it would be, I would compare him to like, he was like a Malcolm X kind of guy. That was like, I see a lot of overlap and similarities in thought and in like methodology and like practices, right?
Malcolm X is a direct disciple of Marcus Garvey.
You don't get Malcolm X without Marcus Garvey, I don't think. And arguably, you could even make the case that he was like as popular and as big of a deal as Malcolm X ever was. It's just tough because this was in the 20s, right? It's like we don't even like think of like historical figures from the 20s anymore. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, they don't have the staying power that someone who was around during like video footage would or something, you know?
Garvey was a bigger deal. To my understanding of history, Garvey was a bigger deal than Malcolm X, and it's just hard for us to conceive of it because of how culturally
removed.
Separated we are from the 1920s.
Yeah, exactly.
Is basically what it is, you know.
But he did very similar shit. Like he had kind of like, he would wear like a uniform. He would wear like a militaristic uniform. And people, he had this organization called the UNIA, which was like his kind of organization that was set up to kind of uplift and empower African Americans and Africans all over the world. But they would wear like very nice dress, and they would wear them in public, and they would wear them around white people to like, I don't necessarily
blow their minds, man.
To blow their minds, yeah.
Well, because he was the one who was introducing all of these people, like the concept of that being black is a good thing,
is a beautiful thing. Yeah,
right? Yeah, like that by and large was not there for people before he started to put it, into people's minds with words. Another quote that is a famous Marcus Garvey quote: "The pen is mightier than the sword, but the tongue is mightier than both of them put together."
Yeah, I love that quote.
And that's how he did it, by talking,
by speaking, doing like all these speaking engagements all over the country.
With words, he put this linguistic thing in people. You know what I mean? Like the people can't conceive of it. They can't have it in their heart if the language for it isn't there, right? He gave them the language for these things.
Yeah, he was like extremely uplifting and extremely empowering for people, especially at that time. I mean, imagine at that time where it was like literal signs in every city that were just like, no colored people here. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like,
because
so for
they
someone
were held down with the language. The language was part of what was being used to restrict what could be in people's hearts.
And so like he had like millions of followers. I think he had like a newsletter or some kind of like magazine basically that he would like distribute.
Yeah, it was the
something to do with the UNIA, I think. But
I can't remember what it's called right now. It's on the tip of my brain. It's like the Black World or something like that.
Yeah. But I mean, basically,
someone tell us in the comments.
He had millions of followers, and by the early 20s, he had millions of followers. And he became like a heavy target of the U.S. government. Like J. Edgar Hoover basically wouldn't be the figure that he is if he didn't cut his teeth on fucking over Marcus Garvey and trying to imprison and ruin Marcus Garvey's life. Like that's basically how J. Edgar Hoover like got his start.
Both him and the FBI became what it is by successfully taking down Marcus Garvey.
Yeah, and they got him on some bullshit too. It was like mail fraud or something. It was like the same shit they got Capone on. It was like some bullshit technicality thing.
Well, it arguably it's even more bullshit because what Marcus Garvey doing was like completely legit, dude. They got him on a technicality, bro. It's so basically what it was he was raising money to build a ship.
Yes.
So and we'll get into the ship in a second.
We'll get into the ship's very important.
Yeah, it's very, very important, especially when we're talking about 2 sevens clash.
Yeah.
But basically, he was raising money to build a ship and sending out a mailer to people, asking them to donate money to build the ship, right? And this mailer had a picture on it of the ship. It was intended to be like a mock-up, here's a picture of a ship, so you can picture the ship that I'm going to be talking about, right? And somebody, in 1920s Photoshop, basically, with like a pen on the negative of the photo or whatever, like wrote in the name of the ship on the photograph of this actual ship, which Marcus Garvey didn't own yet. So on a technically, by the letter of the law, that's false advertisement.
Oh, wow.
He's claiming by this photo that he owns this ship that he doesn't own, thereby defrauding people of their money.
Right.
Now, I'll leave it up to you if that is an unfair accusation. I think that's unfair.
I think that's lame.
And it is absolutely to get him into prison on a technicality any goddamn way that they can, because they've been trying for years, and that's how they did it.
They wound up jailing him and deporting him, right? So it's just like classic. It's the same playbook they used on the Black Panthers later in the 60s and 70s. They infiltrated this organization that he had, and they fucked him over, and they got rid of him, basically, which is just like tale as old as time when it comes to the U.S. government.
By means of espionage and shit.
Yeah, the very first black spy who committed like espionage on behalf of the government was hired by Hoover specifically to infiltrate Garvey's operation in Harlem. So they deported him. He wound up basically, he moved to England for a little while. He tried to do some like speaking engagements, didn't really work out. Kind of sidebar that's not even really important to 27's Clash, but one of the more horrifying things I learned about him was just that like he had a massive stroke when he was like in his early 50s, and people like jumped the gun and by writing his obituary, and he read his own obituary in the paper. And I think maybe had such like an existential crisis reading his own obituary, where people were like basically like, he was a complete failure, and like, his life's work meant nothing, and like he's a total loser, and now he's dying and penniless and broke and blah blah blah. Him reading this caused him to have a second stroke, which is what ultimately killed him.
That's what they say.
Complete nightmare.
That's the legend.
Complete nightmare.
Reading his own shitty, what is it called?
Obituary. Yeah.
Killed the poor man.
Yeah.
Oh my God, dude. Oh, by the way, the reason why the ships are important is because part of what he created was what's called the Black Star Line.
Yes.
Right? Part of his vision. So a huge part of what Marcus Garvey created was the importance of the idea of repatriation.
Yes.
Right? The slogan "Africa for Africans." He really was a huge proponent of this idea that, hey man, all of us who live here in the New World, let's go back.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Africa and live there and make a beautiful society. It'll be amazing. And so partly to take people across the ocean to do that, and also partly to make there be like a nice amazing like shipping network between black people in different parts of the world. Yeah,
to facilitate like trade and like commerce.
And, everything. He wanted to make a fleet of ships, the Black Star Line, right?
Yeah.
And that's what he was raising money for. And that's what the song, what's the title of the song?
Black Starliner.
Yeah, Black Starliner Must Come. One of the best freaking songs on this album. Mm-hmm. That's what he's talking about.
Yes, that's what he's singing about.
If you've ever listened to this album and heard that and you're like, what? What is he talking about?
What is the Black Starliner?
That's what he's talking about. He's talking about, yo, we need these ships, man. Everything that we've said so far, this is who Marcus Garvey was to the, secular world.
Yes.
To the non-Rasta world.
Yes.
Now, within Rastafari, Marcus Garvey is not only everything that we said. Marcus Garvey is a prophet.
In like a Moses. He's a
literal prophet.
A literal black Moses is basically what he was. Yes. And I think how he saw himself too.
Absolutely. Oh,
he bought his own hype big time.
He declared himself the president of Africa.
Like president, like the provisional president of Africa, like in waiting. Basically.
Not by it's not like a euphemism. I'm not summarizing that using different words. Those are the words. Yeah. Literally.
Yeah.
President of Africa.
Yes. Anyway. Yeah. And like I think speaking on this like black repatriation subject, it's like I think there's a lot of kind of there's a lot of aspects of Garvey that, at least in my opinion, are a little. He's not a. There's no perfect historical figure, okay, and he's not exempt from that at all. Marcus Garvey was not a black supremacist. Like, right. He did not believe like black people were superior to white people or any other race for that matter. But he was a black separatist, right? He did believe that, and like honestly, I almost don't fault any black person for feeling this way, which is he basically came to the arrival of like this clearly doesn't work for black people. Like, the United States is a white supremacist country, right? They're never going to allow black people a foothold in any meaningful way in this society.
He didn't have any faith in that turning out. Yep. So
there was another very prominent political thinker of the time named W.E.B. Du Bois, right? Who also African American, and I would compare him to, like, he was kind of more of the like Martin Luther King, Gandhi kind of progressive ilk, right?
Like we can work together.
We can work together. He believed in integration. He believed in, races living like side by side, black and white people like living harmoniously. Eventually, it would take things like nonviolent civil rights and stuff that we wound up seeing playing out in the 50s and 60s in the United States, right? So he's really influential in that regard. But Garvey and Garveyism basically said like, no, man, like this clearly doesn't work. Like we should just leave. Like we should all just leave, like it's never gonna work out for black people. And again, one of the things I really had to reckon with this episode is like, when it comes to this kind of racial separatism, is not something I agree with, like, at all. Like, I disagree. I fundamentally disagree with Marcus Garvey on this issue.
In that's not possible. Like that, you don't agree with him.
I don't think that's something people should strive for, even.
To be separate. Okay.
Yeah. And but I'll add a caveat to that, which is that I don't blame any black person for feeling that way, or striving for that, or trying to accomplish that. But the problem is, the white people that do think that, they're racist as fuck. That's why they think that. It's because they're fucking racists, right?
Right.
So
they are supremacists.
They are, like black people, it's coming from a place of like this deep injustice that they've been, that's been afflicted upon them. But for white people, it's just because they're fucking racist, right? So, and this is one of the more controversial things about Garvey, was that and I think this was one of his biggest mistakes, was that he actually met with like the leaders of the KKK because he saw a common goal, basically, because
of a separate existence,
of a separate existence, and because I think very cynically, but kind of correctly, he saw the KKK as basically the shadow government of the United States, because at the time, they essentially were. It was like every police officer in certain parts of the country. I mean, there's footage of less than 100 years ago of like it was like 100,000 person KKK march in Washington, D.C., right?
Yeah, so, like in front of the Capitol building.
In front of the Capitol, in front of the White House, right?
Yeah, with the police standing there.
He basically put two and two together and just said, well, these are the real people who are actually making the decisions. Exactly. So I should just talk to them.
That's such a detail that is lost for a lot of people about that. The fact that Garvey met with them, which is like all he was doing, whether he's delusional about it or correct about it or not, that's up to you to decide. But what he was essentially doing was like, look, I need to have a meeting with the actual leader of the white people.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to talk to the president of the United States. Yeah. Because that's a fucking puppet.
Yep.
I'm going to actually talk to the leader. I'm going to talk to the leader of the KKK.
Yeah.
Because remember, this is the 20s.
Yeah, it's the 20s. Yeah. The KKK had like a very high position
Yeah, it's not like how it is now.
In daily life. Yeah, it's not, well, it's almost like how it is now. It's getting back there, but
it's closer now than
it's closer now than it was 10 or 15 years ago. But yeah, that is one of the more controversial things about him that I think we can't really gloss over because it is insane that he did that, and it's insane that happened. But like, I think, you're right to point out that it was different, and I think that they had a different standing in American life than they do now, and definitely a different reputation. It wasn't controversial to be in the KKK back then. It was like kind of just like a thing that you was a club, you know. His thinking being a way to accomplish getting Black people out of this dire situation that they find themselves in at this point, due to colonialism, due to slavery, due to all this subjugation by all these
Babylon.
Yeah, by Babylon, was to create this shipping line to basically transport. I think initially, what did he want to do? He wanted to transport just like the highest echelon, like African Americans, like scientists, teachers, educators, and basically take them to, I think, Liberia is where they were going to go.
Yeah.
Liberia and like
Liberia was a place in Africa that was basically set aside and given to freed American slaves.
Yes, right. So he wanted to go to Liberia, basically build the infrastructure, build the groundwork, with kind of higher ranking like Black intellectuals around the world. And like tradespeople and like craftsmen and stuff like that, basically build out like the infrastructure of the country, and then have kind of like a mass migration, a mass exodus to Liberia for all these people.
Yeah, and so repatriation is a theme that is one of the main veins, thematic veins that runs through roots reggae. You can hear it not only in culture, not only in Bob Marley, it's everywhere.
Yes. Yeah.
Every singer sang about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And Garvey being like probably one of these, I would say the central like philosophical leader of Rastafarianism.
Absolutely. Okay. So now getting into Garvey as he pertains to Rastafari. There is no Bob Marley. There is no any of this without Marcus Garvey. Emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. Mm-hmm. None but ourselves will free our mind.
Yeah.
Like in this modern day, so many people go like, damn, that Bob Marley. What a nasty lyric that is. That's great. And put it on their dorm room wall.
Right.
Except that who said that? Marcus Garvey said that.
Right.
That's Bob singing a Marcus Garvey lyric. He is major figure. There is no Rastafari without Marcus Garvey. Rastafari is built upon a particular reading of the Bible and Marcus Garvey's teachings. Right? He like I said before, he's literally a prophet. Right? So his words, when he spoke, they are prophecies. And the foundation, so Rastafari beginning as a religious movement, what began it, what it's based upon is the fulfillment of one of Marcus Garvey's prophecies.
Yes.
Coinciding with a prophecy being interpreted from the Bible. Okay.
Yes.
So in Jamaica in the 20s and the 30s, people Christians were there studying the Bible. They saw that the two things line up. One is that there's this thing in the Bible that says that there will be a crown, a king
in Africa,
a black king crowned in Africa, and the other is that Marcus Garvey once said to look to the east for the black king to be crowned in Africa. In the 30s, that happened, right? Haile Selassie the first was crowned the king of Ethiopia. So that was interpreted to be and believed to be that is Christ returning to earth.
Yeah, that is important.
Yes.
Haile Selassie, a real guy. He was the king of Ethiopia from the 30s through like the 70s, I want to say, right?
Something like that.
He was literally seen by Rastafarians as the second coming of Jesus Christ. That's what they believed.
Rastas, in one sense, or could be said, maybe incorrectly, I don't know, but in one sense could be understood to be Christians who believe that we're not waiting for Christ to return. He has returned.
Yeah, he came back
in the form of this king, Haile Selassie. So, so that event, that is Marcus Garvey's prophecy coming true. That's what Rasta is founded upon.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, like, his other teachings, other prophecies, one of which is when he said, when the two sevens will clash, is when the oppressed will rise against the oppressors, and they'll take the world back.
Yeah.
And that's what this album is about. That's what this song is about, because Joseph Hill, now going back to Joseph Hill, was riding on a bus one day and was just like struck. The Holy Spirit spoke to him. That is the through line of this album, is prophecy.
Yes.
This album is all about prophecy. This is like a religious revival. Like you imagine those like revival events, like in the tents out in a field, and people just like, like holding snakes up to each other and like, wigging out and speaking in tongues and shit. That's the kind of religion that's on this record.
Yeah,
man. When you see what culture looks like on stage, when the way that they move, the way that they like, and the prophecy runs deep in this album, man. So he was on the bus. He was looking at this cotton tree.
Yes. Okay.
Right. And he was just wondering. This cotton tree is in the middle of Kingston. There's no other trees like it around. Everything around it is just buildings and city. Why is this tree here? This is this big ass tree. Why is it here? And he, like, between just him deducing it logically and just like, what's being told to him by God, by the Spirit, he's like, the reason why that tree is still there and wasn't cleared out like all the others, that must be the tree that they tied the slaves to whip them.
Wow.
That must be why they kept that tree there. And then he said, in the next moment, then he heard God say, like, I will destroy that tree by thunder and lightning. Yeah.
And that's a lyric in the song, too.
Everything that I'm saying to you are like line for line the lyrics of the song Two Sevens Clash.
Yeah.
Tell you about the bus and looking out the window and everything, right? And so he went home and started putting it onto paper and getting the guitar out or the piano, however he wrote the music for the song, writing it over the next few days. A couple days after he has this epiphany, and after he starts writing it, what happens? Lightning strikes that tree. That tree got destroyed by lightning like a few days after that.
This album is spooky, people. I'm telling you. This record is spooky as fuck, dude. Like,
yeah. Joseph Hill is like talking about prophecies. He's like, people don't respect prophecy in their own time. Like, when it's only a prophecy and nothing has happened, like nobody listens to it, nobody respects it. He's like, but they will, because they have no choice. He's like, people didn't respect Bob Marley's words when he was alive like they do after he died.
Right.
Right? And he said, this is a quote from Joseph Hill, "A man don't know the use of his ass until there's a boil upon it. A cow don't know the use of his tail until the butcher cut it off." Right? So, like, people aren't gonna heed these things. People, what he's saying is like, dude, it's in the Bible. Marcus Garvey said it.
Yep.
The shit is the truth. Like, and people will not respect it until it's too late, until it has come to pass, until the boil is on your ass. You won't value the fact that you get to sit down without any discomfort.
I think because you brought up like kind of like more like church Christian, like tent revivalist kind of like vibe of this album. I would even go so far as to say that it's even crazier than that. Like it's even more fervent religiosity than even something like that. Because for those Christian revivalist tents and stuff like that, they may be talking about prophecies and stuff too, and they may be talking about stuff that's come from the Bible, and this is supposed to happen, this is supposed to happen, except none of that shit's happening, right? But according to Rastas, it's like, it just happened. Like, like Jesus Christ was just here. Like he visited Jamaica. Like Haile Selassie just visited Jamaica. Like,
dude, imagine Americans if Jesus came to America and got off the plane and waved to you. That's what these people are experiencing.
And like people believed it. Yeah, that was Jesus. Yeah, like
there he is. He's on the steps of the plane.
There are even accounts of Jamaicans that swear when he waved to them that they could see like stigmata in the palm of his hand. Stigmata being like blood coming from the palm of his hands, like when Christ was nailed to the cross, right? So like there are people that swear. There are Jamaicans
they
that
literally
swear they saw stigmata from Haile Selassie's hand, right?
Are you going to call him a liar? I'm not going to call him a liar.
I'm not going to call him a liar, but it's like that's the kind of fervent religiosity that was in the air when this album was being conceived of and when it came out, which is why like Joseph Hill, he's singing these amazing songs and he's saying like these prophecies are coming true. And look, Jesus Christ just made a state visit from Ethiopia like a few years ago. It's like,
oh, I'm sorry. Did you not just see Jesus get off the plane?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought Jesus was just here. Oh, I must be crazy then. Okay.
Yeah. So
never mind then.
For us, when you hear like kind of really crazy, like religious fundamentalists, like Christians and stuff, you know, it's so easy to just be like, whatever, dude. Like, whatever. But like to Jamaicans, it's like,
well, it's to like, Rastas.
To Rastas, yeah.
Rastas is a minority population of Jamaica.
Yeah. Okay. But I would argue even it's like, I think, you know how like when like so many things start to line up and so many things start, and like there's people who are like swearing that like this is happening and swear, it's like, it does kind of make you a little nervous sometimes, kind of like, well, I don't know. I kind of want to like cover all my bases here.
Man don't know the use of his ass till there's a boil upon it.
Exactly. And I think
you don't know.
I think that's how a lot of Jamaicans probably felt around the time of when this album came out, was just like, you know, I don't know, man.
I'm gonna stay into
pretty weird,
right, dude? I saw like a bunch of comments in a lot of comment sections during my research for this episode, like of people saying like, oh yeah, I lived in Jamaica on that date. I remember. Like,
yeah, it was weird.
We just stayed home. We're like, fuck that. I'm not going outside. You know?
Yeah.
And then nothing happened.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Yeah, nothing happened. But still vaunted Culture and Joseph Hill into like kind of legendary status. And just because it's like the best record ever.
One of the things that stands out to me when we talk about this album musically, in terms of what are these folks actually playing, is sort of a rarity amongst roots reggae albums, which is that like the prominent instruments, most prominent instruments in what's happening here seem to be the keyboards.
I agree. I'm so glad you pointed that out. That was going to be my big, like, did you know that I think that it's really like a keyboard album?
Well, great minds think alike.
I think so.
Imagine taking away the keyboard parts on this album and it just like, it goes away. It is not 2/7 Clash anymore. You know? Okay, think about the song Get Ready. Get ready to ride the lion to Zion, right? That synth part, this the ding 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 ding. What is this song without that? You know, and the clavinet. So okay, if anybody doesn't know, all the multitude of keyboard instruments that are on this album. So just that song alone. So you have a synthesizer that's playing the ping, 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 ping. And over in the left ear, you have the distorted clavinet,
gnarly clav sound
with
on this
the wah
record.
pedal on it. Right, that sound so nasty. Sounds like the lion roaring.
Distorted through an amp big time, like just fucking cranked through a guitar
played through
amp.
like a guitar amp.
Yeah.
You have the organ, you know, like a B3 organ or some sort of Hammond organ, you know, playing those little fills in there, in between the lines. You have the acoustic piano playing the upbeats and little little variations on the upbeat, holding down the skank, the piano skank in there. And then on a lot of the songs, maybe every song, I don't know, there's also like an electric piano. There's like a Wurlitzer
like a Rhodes. There's a Rhodes on a
electric
lot
piano.
of this. Yeah, there's Rhodes on a lot.
And playing just like a lot of like full out chords, like playing like R&B parts that are in there, just swimming around in the background. That's not very common.
Yeah.
For these records,
definitely Rhodes. You don't think of as like a Jamaican element. Like
electric piano is very rarely found on these records.
Yeah.
And also what's rarely found is all 5 of those simultaneously.
Yeah.
It's normally some mixture of 2 or 3 of them.
Almost makes me wonder, like, is there actually more people like on this?
Yeah, because I do know that at Joe Gibbs' studio during this time, there's a 16-track recorder.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking...
Or maybe some was overdubs.
There may be some overdubs. Yeah. Because
shit down.
Also, on these recordings too, these, you know, non-Night Nurse, non-Exodus recordings, overdubs on these old Jamaican recordings can become very apparent what they are. It'll be like the entire song, the drums, the whole band, the singer, sounding like they're in one sort of muffled place. And then there's like a tambourine just like loud and clear in a totally different location, right? Okay, that's a dead giveaway that someone took this master tape and said, hey, I want to overdub some percussion on it, and made a new version, okay? Right. I think that was done like with the clavinet.
Yeah.
A lot of times, one of the dead giveaways is when something is hard panned, is panned very prominently to left or right, because then the whole mix ends up sticking together on one side, and then the overdubs on another side. Yeah. So yeah, I think the clavinet was probably overdubbed, along with like the sound effect of the lion roaring.
Oh man, that's like I was gonna save that for standout songs, but yeah, it's so fucking cool. And another rare production technique you don't hear on a lot of Jamaican recordings is like the use of like sound effects. It's like a fucking sound effect, you know. It's so neat that they put that in there.
It's like a movie thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would compare for people who are looking for maybe like a comparison point for the keyboards and as I think especially the synths on this record. To me, the synths sound a lot like P-Funk synths. Like imagine a song like "I'm Alone in the Wilderness." How prominent those synths are throughout the song. Can't take it out. They're like one of the backbones of the songs. And he's just all over it. But you're right. The keys are kind of the tastiest, nastiest kind of players on this.
Normally it's like the drums and bass.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's like just like a nasty guitar thing. Like in a lot of Channel One records, there's some like stanky ass guitar flowing through.
Like Night Nurse was like a very like guitar-y record for me. Like there's tons of it's like guitar stuff everywhere. That's one of the stuff I love.
One of the same guitarists is
Bingy
on
Bunny.
here.
Bingy Bunny,
who we were bigging up last time.
I was going to say
on this album.
Bingy Bunny's back, but this came out first. So
Right. Yeah.
Bingy Bunny is here again, I should just say. But yeah, I mean, let's just like highlight the musicians for a sec.
Okay. Yeah, there's some very notable players.
A murderer's row.
Names to know.
Names to know of this particular murderer's row. So like when we say there's like 16-person ensemble,
everybody get out your Wikipedia, look at the personnel part.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Like it might be easy to kind of think like, oh, 16 people, like I'm sure like a lot of them are probably just like whoever or maybe less important musically on the record. Like, no, dude.
Or that they're taking turns and some of them only play on some songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nope.
No, they're all on here on pretty much every song.
Yeah, they're all legends. So and they're all playing the whole time.
So you got Joseph Hill and Culture, super famous vocal trio, obvious, you know, the lead singer, the vocalist on this record. Then you got Lloyd Parks and Sly and Robbie, who I think are the next kind of most important tier of like the bedrock of the music. So I want to highlight Lloyd Parks and Sly and Robbie together for a reason, which is that Lloyd Parks is playing bass, and so he was like the in-house bass player of Joe Gibbs, the producer, right? So he played on like a bajillion Joe Gibbs productions, right? And Joe Gibbs was like a super influential, super famous
one of the big
Jamaican producer. So Lloyd Parks and Sly Dunbar are the drum and bass combo. Now you see Sly and Robbie on here. Sly and Robbie are usually a drum and bass duo, right? That's usually their role. But on here, Robbie Shakespeare's playing guitar, but he's not playing the typical kind of like upstroke skank reggae guitar that you're thinking of. Yeah. Robbie Shakespeare is playing stick, which is a very...
this is so... Do we finally get to talk about stick guitar?
It's a very important role in reggae. So the stick guitar player, Brandon is a wonderful stick guitar player and is a stick guitar player in Smoke and Mirror sound system right now.
Yes. It by the way, it goes by a few different names. It's sort of like a regional thing, sort of how like in some parts of the country they call it pop, in some places they call it soda. Some people call it Coke, you know? It's like that. So it can be called like shadow guitar, shadow bass. It can be called pick bass or pick guitar.
I like shadow bass because that's what it is.
That's right, because you're shadowing the bass. But yeah, you and I, we grew up calling it stick guitar. Stick, play stick. You play skank, I'll play stick. Skank is the you know, that's playing the upbeat. I'll play skank and you play stick. So what is stick now if I'm playing stick?
Yeah. So yeah, stick guitar in a reggae context is essentially a guitar player whose entire job is to double the bass part, like oftentimes note for note. Sometimes it's a little less. Sometimes it's a little more fluid than that, where they'll kind of do more lead stuff. Like on Night Nurse, there's a stick part, but it is like more fluid.
Night Nurse is a really good example of the stick guitar player having more
kind of independence from the bass part.
Independence, yeah, exactly.
But it is still a stick part. But in this case, I think it is one of the master stroke, like genius allocations of music or of musicians on this particular record, which is that we have Sly and Robbie, but we also have Lloyd Parks. So what we're going to do is take one of the greatest bass players of all time and have him play stick. Like it's so smart. And like
he's going to double the bass line.
He's going to double. So you have one of the best bass players ever actually playing guitar, doubling one of the other best bass players ever. And it's really genius. And I want to highlight it because I think when you, like listeners, when you listen to this record, listen for that guitar that is doubling the bass part, right? Not the lead guitar, that's Bingy Bunny. Not the skank guitar, that is probably Lennox Gordon, I would think.
It might
be a mix of all three of them. It could be a mix of all of them.
Because Bingy Bunny's role in Roots Radics
was the skank player.
The skank.
Yeah, it's true. So it could be. Who knows though?
I have no idea.
And there's no way to know.
Yeah,
either.
the document. We were if the documentation of that exists, we were not able to find it.
Yeah, well, we couldn't find anything about that kind of stuff. But yeah, so like listen carefully to the bass part, and in addition, listen very carefully to the doubled stick guitar part, because I think the articulation Robbie Shakespeare is able to accomplish here, only a fellow bass player, I think, could double this so perfectly. The guitar stuff is amazing. We've also kind of touched on how important all the keyboard playing stuff is, but then you also have founding members of the Scottalites on horns here.
Yes.
Who, if you don't know who the Scottalites are like possibly the most important Jamaican band there is, maybe other than the Wailers.
I would say no. I would say it's the Scottalites.
It's the Scottalites. Yeah, I agree.
So Tommy McCook and Vin Gordon.
Yeah, they're the ones that you, especially Tommy McCook. I feel like even if you're even sort of familiar with Jamaican music, you might recognize the name Tommy McCook. But yeah, Tommy McCook and Vin Gordon were like day one members of the Scottalites. Also Sticky Thompson, probably the most famous like Jamaican percussionist, I would think. He's on everything. Like
he also played on Night Nurse.
That's right, exactly. He's on Night Nurse as well.
I wouldn't be surprised if he played on Exodus too. Yeah, and this was recorded in '76, man. This was like so for this roots reggae. This specific kind of era of reggae that we're focusing on in this series. 76 is when it's really picking up steam.
Big time.
It's probably like between 75, maybe even 76 being like the earlier year of the true golden age through to like 82, 83.
Yep.
Yeah. And
again, you could say the same thing about punk. They were like these congruent like movements happening.
Like the same exact golden age, right?
Same exact time period they came up, same exact golden age. Yeah.
But yeah, the musician, as we were talking about before, this album has a freneticness, has a wildness, a freedom. You can hear how free the players are. Like in the last song, or sorry, on the last song, Natty Dread Taking Over. If you're listening to it in headphones, check out just in the right ear. Whichever one of the guitar players it is, the dude is just playing a guitar solo the entire time.
Yep.
Through the whole song. It's just, and it's, normally when you're a guitar player and you're tasked with doing that, it's like, okay, you need to find the holes, do the call and response to the vocal.
In a way that like the horns are on that song. Like the horns have like the horns have a very like deliberate part and role. Yeah.
And then he sings, Susukam, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, normally you'll let the singer Natty Dread, and then you play here, taking over, and then you play here.
Yeah.
But no, that's not what he's doing. He's just constantly soloing wherever.
Yeah.
And you know what? It sounds perfect.
Yeah, it's great.
It's in the spot. It's in the pocket. It's in that space in the music where it does fit. How do you make that part fit there? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I imagine myself being in the session and
not doing
like,
that.
Oh, wait, what should I play? You guys are like, yeah, just play lead.
Whatever.
When you just
You'll figure it out.
I picture the end result being very disastrous,
shitty. Yeah.
And this,
or maybe it was one of those things where they like maybe Joe Gibbs was like, I want the option. I don't know where I want to put you, but I know I want you on it. So just play the whole time, and I'll put it where I need it to be later.
Right.
And then maybe he just was like, it sounds great. Listen to it. It sounds great the whole time.
Which leads to the question, by the way. Joe Gibbs is a really interesting figure, and is one of many figures in the Jamaican music industry where now we're talking about the producers. We're talking about the producers, y'all. And what does that mean exactly? The producer. That when you look on the credits or the liner notes of an album and it says produced by blank, what exactly does that mean?
Especially because in this context, it's not like you could just use producer as a catch-all for like, oh, he was running the console or something, because there's actually a specific engineer on this record as well, who is Errol Thompson. And
that's right.
Joe Gibbs and Errol Thompson were specifically known as the Mighty Two because of their production team.
Right, with Errol Thompson being the engineer for Joe Gibbs's productions.
Yes.
But so like, for example, in the American music industry, there's some variance of what exactly is that producer person doing exactly, but it's generally understood to be, they're the guiding force in those recording sessions. They're the decision makers, making the decisions and pointing and telling people what to do and making the decisions of what this is going to sound like and in what way is this record going to be made, because there's a million different ways you can make it, right? Very similar to like a director in a movie. In the Jamaican music industry, there's a bit more variance, because in some cases, like in the case of Joe Gibbs, the producer could sometimes be someone who has literally zero musical background.
Right.
Has never known how to play music or how to sing, has never performed a day in their life, and really is coming to this music industry from the background of being a business person. Mm-hmm. Right? So you got, and I say business person because it's not always men. You got Sonia Pottinger. So Sonia Pottinger is another great reggae producer. She produced an album that Culture made the next year after this, Harder Than the Rest. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But the reason why I bring up Sonia Pottinger is she's also one. There are many Joe Gibbs and of these people who they're business people,
right?
And so it's a question. I don't actually know how much did Joe Gibbs have to do with the music on his records, and I'm suspecting that is quite little, and possibly at times none, right? Because what he did, he owned the building,
the studio,
he owned the studio, he owned the record press, he owned the machinery, he owned the distribution, he owned. You see what I mean? Like
that was his role.
He is the label. He is he's like the identity of this music making and selling machine, right? And so this is a Joe Gibbs production. Who is the producer, Joe Gibbs, but who actually arranged it, recorded it, made these musical decisions. Now, there are some, and I say it's variable because there are some examples of the producer who is intimately involved with the actual music, right?
Yeah.
One of the biggest examples of that is Lee Scratch Perry.
Yeah, true.
There are songs that came out of Lee Scratch Perry's studio that he wrote the lyrics.
Yep.
He wrote the music, and he's not even credited for it.
Right.
The artist is credited for it. But Joe Gibbs, it goes the other way.
Yeah.
There's music that came out of his studio that he had nothing to do with the actual music, but he's literally he ended up being financially ruined by a lawsuit of someone suing him for putting himself as a songwriter in a song that he didn't write.
Yeah, that's true. And
it came back to bite him in the ass.
Bit him in the ass hard. And it's hard to say, because if I use the Bible of all things that are correct that have ever been said, Wikipedia, Errol Thompson, it says Errol Thompson, who is the engineer, it says at the bottom of personnel, it says Errol Thompson, Joe Gibbs, arranging and mixing.
Okay, I see that.
So maybe they did though, or like you're saying, maybe they took credit for it Because like the other thing I
and
think
maybe
of,
Robbie Shakespeare did all the freaking musical direction.
like,
you know,
we don't know because Brandon and I could not find any valuable information on like how this was produced. Really, like there's not, that information is either lost to time or just doesn't exist. But it's one of those things where, or we just couldn't find it. Yeah. It's one of those things where like I look at all the musicians on this and I'm like, did they need help with arranging from like a guy? Does Robbie Shakespeare and Sly Dunbar and Lloyd Parks and Bingy Bunny and the Scottalites, do they need like someone to tell them how the songs go? You know what I mean? Like I don't think so.
Well, I mean, even when you get in, and you know, I'm sure you've been in these sessions at Capitol.
Even then, a producer can still be very useful.
Somebody, even when everyone in the room needs no help to come up with the perfect part, someone has to be, you know, it's like, okay, who's driving, you know, like we're all going in the same place in this bus, but who's gonna steer? Someone has to.
I have a feeling it probably went something like that. You've got Joe Gibbs, who essentially says, I want this to happen. Yeah. Errol Thompson executing it technically. That's a very traditional.
Getting it onto the tape.
Onto tape. That's a very traditional role. I have a feeling that's how it happened. But again, like you were saying, like you pointed out, Joe Gibbs had a tendency to overinflate his role on some of these records, which is what hurt him later down the road. So it's hard to say. To make the money,
yeah.
It's usually what happens.
Yeah, and why? Because, you know, like we said, how booming this music industry was. This was a cash cow. This was a huge opportunity to make money for people. You know, to invest. Like how people who have nothing to do with sports teams will buy a sports team. You know, that's what having a record studio and a record label and making and putting out records was like in Jamaica at the time. You know,
another thing I would I would put money on this. Like a huge reason for why this record like sounds the way it does to our ears, like how we were talking earlier, how it has that it's like a hot mix, and like there are parts of it that are this is a giveaway to me. Whenever I hear a record from this time period that is almost overly sibilant, which I think this record is, there's a lot of like in the vocals and you hear it in the hi-hat as well. Mm-hmm. That is almost a dead giveaway to me that this was the version of this album that we listen to on Spotify or Tidal or wherever you're listening to it. The digital version of this that we're listening to is almost assuredly ripped straight from some kind of vinyl source or lacquer source, because that's what you get from any vinyl pressing.
Interesting.
Is oftentimes they're like overly sibilant, and it's something you have to work on in the master. But to me, that's like almost a dead giveaway that like whatever version of it we're listening to, we don't even have a version of it from like the master tapes. I doubt it. Right. I kind of doubt we do.
That's right. And that is my predominant theory that really explains why so much music from the island from this time sounds that way, that murky quality that we were talking about. I believe that it has more to do with the process by which we have the digital versions and the versions that ended up on all the CDs.
I think you're right.
That we listened to throughout the 80s and the 90s. That has more to do with it than it does of what were these original master tapes and these original recordings sounding like that these engineers were making at the time.
Right.
And I think that it comes down to the state that the master tapes were kept in.
Right.
After they were recorded, just through weather, humidity.
Yep.
things like this. I don't know if they were kept in refrigerated rooms like how they are in Los Angeles and a lot of other places in the world, where you can go and take a master tape that was recorded 50 years ago, and it doesn't sound exactly the same as it did at the time, but it sounds great.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that by the time that these things are getting digitized,
you got to think Jamaica's a humid, hot place. It's not a place where tapes want to live.
And they were very often kept again in a non-ideal state.
And I would even guess they reused tapes. They probably just recorded over a bunch of tapes.
Right. A lot of the masters maybe don't exist anymore. And so the place where if you want to digitize this song, where can you get it from? Exactly like you're saying, from a lacquer or from a vinyl.
Yeah. And even lacquers.
And an old one at that.
Yeah. Even lacquers don't last forever. Like that, even those have like a decay to them and like an end point to which you can't use them anymore. Yeah. Less so than tape, I think, or maybe I have that backwards, but like they're non-ideal mediums for storage. That's for sure.
This is a theory that I've had. I don't have it corroborated. I don't know if this is true or not, but it's just like a hunch that I've had for years, which is that I really think that a lot of these recordings on the day sounded so much better than what we have ever heard of them.
I think you're right. The only way to like really corroborate that, the best one is to find out if the master tapes exist, which I doubt they do. And two would be to source a very good copy of like a first Jamaican pressing of this album or an album like this or whatever. That's the only way you could really know. If a first pressing of this from Jamaica sounded like really pristine and really good, then I think that would, and sounded different from this.
It's got to be there in somebody's aunt's house in Jamaica. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Can everyone who's hearing our voice in Jamaica, can you please go check aunt and uncle's record collection and see if there's just like a copy of 2/7's Clash that they listened to like once.
Yeah,
it's just been sitting there.
Send it to me. Yeah. I'll take it. I will take it. I'll take this burden from you of this first pressing of 2/7's Clash. I'll take that responsibility on.
Yeah. That's very brave of you, Nate.
Because, I mean, I think, like, essentially what you get, because I have this record on vinyl, too, but it's, like, essentially what winds up happening is you have, like, a vinyl source going to a digital land, which then becomes the source for another piece of vinyl.
Next pressing on the vinyl. Exactly.
Yeah. So it's, like, really not... And
that's what ends up on Spotify.
And then maybe that's what ends up on Spotify.
That's what ends up on the CDs that we listened to in the 90s. That's what, you know...
Yeah. So you have to kind of keep that in mind with a lot of Jamaican records. It is like kind of there should be some leeway there.
Because a lot of them are in way worse condition than this record.
Big time. I think this record sounds really good for all things considered. To be honest, like for me, I love how this sounds. Like regardless of like, oh, is there a version of it that sounds like cleaner or better? Like maybe, but who knows? But like. I have a very special place in my heart for the sound of this record. I think it's like very exciting to listen to.
Standout songs.
Standing out.
So Nate,
song like
you hath been the one who hath choseth this, but this time through, listen through, what were your standout songs? What did you enjoy in partic?
I have 3. Because we don't have like a set.
Very restrained of you.
It is, because I could easily say all of them because they're all great. But you know, I like to give you some, you know, I like to share, you know, I'm not greedy. I like to give Brandon a couple of favorites.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, that's true. I'm pretty greedy. No, I have 3. My first is Calling Rastafari, which is what, the very first song, I think.
The first song.
Great track one. Amazing track one. Kind of, like we always say, a great encapsulation of the whole record. Also, though, just really standout production on that song. The like flange or phase, whatever's on the drums.
Phaser,
it's
baby.
phaser on the drums. It's so sick. Yeah, it's a phaser sound that we kind of strive for in a lot of our work as well. It's a very kind of Lee Perry. It's evocative of like a Lee Perry kind of sound. In fact, like this whole record really has like kind of a Lee Perry-ness to it that I really enjoy, even though I don't think he had anything to do with this.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, he had nothing to do with this. But
well, Lee Perry, earlier in time, maybe 10 years, or like 8 or 9 years before this was recorded, was Joe Gibbs's head engineer.
Exactly. So you can hear that. You can no wonder. I mean, you can hear the similarities.
And while this was recorded, Lee Perry was one of the leading sounds of making hit records, and it makes sense that he would be emulated. Yeah,
it's true. Yeah, I mean, I think Calling Rastafari just has everything going for it in terms of like what you're looking to get out of this record. It has these soaring vocal trio that kind of soar over the whole top of the song. Amazing kind of steppers beat, right? If I'm remembering correctly. Also, another awesome part of this record is it showcases a lot of the different Jamaican drum beats that were prominent at the time. There's lots of great one drop on this, and there's lots of great steppers on this. This doesn't have a rockers beat, but the rockers beat being the whole Night Nurse album, basically, except for one song.
Yeah, we talked about the rockers beat on Night Nurse, right?
Yeah.
The boom, ka, boom.
Yeah. Black, like AC/DC kind of beat, basically, with reggae over it. That's basically what it is.
Kick, snare, yeah.
But this first song, Calling Rastafari, being a great example of a steppers beat, which is where the drummer is basically playing quarter notes, like 4 on the floor. He's just stepping. He's just boom, boom, boom,
right.
boom, boom.
The bass drum goes.
It's just this constant
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Second, and these are in no particular order, but the next one I have is 2/7's Clash. The song rips. Absolutely rips. It's the song that the whole album's about. So thematically, it's very exciting. It's very fun to listen to. It has kind of most of the like prophetic stuff that we're talking about is in that song.
Some of the most obscured lyrics.
Yeah.
Of this is a song, even for the outsider patois scholars of us.
Yeah.
Even this song are like, what
is he saying?
Hell is he saying?
Yeah. I had to really, because I've listened to this album 1,000 times, so I know all the words, right? I can sing along to this album.
Some of them are meaningless syllables coming from me, but I know what they all are.
I had to go in and like double check, like, okay, what is he talking about here? Like, what is he singing about?
So the line in the chorus, Wadalibabambaye, when the 2/7s clash. Okay, that's like one of the least understood lyrics in all of reggae.
I agree.
Okay? I believe that I have found like a new, at least for myself, a new level of understanding of that line in research for this episode.
I'm sure you're about to correct me, but my understanding was like it's basically like he's saying, like, when the calamity comes to pass, basically, like when like shit is gonna hit the fan, when the 2/7s clash, like, right? That's kind of what I think.
Essentially, yeah. I found sources like for example on genius.com, which is if you don't know that website, that's an amazing website for finding out what's up with these lyrics. I found an interview with Joseph Hill where he explains that line.
Okay.
And the explanation, it contradicts what the explanation on Genius is.
Okay.
On Genius, it says, like, what a live and Bambaye, meaning, like, what will remain? What will be left when the two sevens clash?
Yeah.
Once the two sevens clash, what's going to be left, right? But that's not what he said. So I found it's a interview with Joseph Hill that was done by Roger Steffens.
Okay.
1983. Roger Steffens did like some of the best interviews with Bob Marley and a bunch of other people. And he asked, he's such a good interviewer. He just asks him, "Hey,
what does that mean?
What does that line mean?" No, it's even better. He's like, "Dude, I love the song Two Sevens Clash, but I've always had trouble understanding the lyrics. Can you do me a favor? Can you go through line by line and just say what it means?" So what he says is that the line is "what a lib bom bombaye," which means, okay, he says this in the interview. I don't know what this means. The first thing he says is, "could be spreading milk." Okay. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. But then he says, it means like what a big thing, what a time it will be, what a time that will be. Like, man, it's going to be a big thing when the two sevens clash. And that's what it means.
Well, that
is essentially what you're saying.
Sort of. That gets to it's interesting you just brought that up, because that gets to another aspect that I think we haven't quite touched on, which is that, yes, this was an apocalyptic kind of warning album.
Yeah.
But in a very contradictory sense, they were seeing that as like a celebratory thing. Like it was like reason to celebrate, right?
Well, right, because so I used to have the understanding that what the prophecy was foretelling was Armageddon. Just straight up. And maybe that is what it means, but more specifically, it's when the oppressed will take the world back.
It's like Armageddon, specifically. Armageddon for Babylon.
So for Rastas, that's cause for celebration.
Exactly. It's scary because it's like the world as we know it is going to end. But for Rastas, it is like, it's a party, dude. It's like
right.
fucking...
It's like finally the world as we know it is going to end. Jesus Christ. Like,
so I don't really think they meant it in the sense of like how I'm sure a lot of people took it, which is like, the world's going to like explode or something.
Right.
You know,
yeah. Not Armageddon in that sense.
Not in that sense. In the sense of like the shackles of oppression will be cast away, like will be off. But yeah, that's really interesting. And then my third and final standout. There's one other one that was like I was on the cusp of picking it, but I think you'll probably pick it anyway. For me, and this is far and away my favorite song on the record, and I think probably one of my favorite reggae songs, period, is Get Ready to Ride the Lion to Zion.
Oh, man.
That is by far my favorite song on this.
What a jam.
Yeah.
What a jam. Yes. If you don't like this song, you don't like music. This song is music, dude.
Yeah,
Holy shit.
I agree. Okay. There's so much going on, and you've already touched on it so well, of all the intricate kind of synth stuff.
I didn't know you were planning on talking about it.
No, it's okay, because you did it better than I could have anyway. All the intricate synth stuff. It's just, for me, it's like a melodic thing. I just find the melody of this song is so catchy. It is so catchy, and it's so danceable, and it's so fun. It's just such a fun song. And I read an interesting thing that initially they completely changed the track listing and basically flipped the track listing like that.
That's right.
Get ready.
Front A used to be B and B used to be A, right?
Exactly. So it's actually backwards now. Or maybe they always wanted it this way and they made that change. I don't know. But like this was essentially supposed to be the first track. And it's a fucking jam to start the album off, if that's true.
Get Ready was track one. Dude, that makes so much more sense.
I think so too.
Because one of my impressions on listening through the album on this time, and sort of every time that I put this on, because every time that I put on this record, I have all my memories of how great it is and all the amazing musical moments that are coming. And I'm all excited. And then I put it on, and every single time I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that the first song is Calling Rastafari. I'm like, why is this the first
Why?
song?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It's something I'm very attuned to too, because it's something I think you and I are always so careful about when we're putting our albums together. Like, that is like a big deal. Like, me and Brandon will spend like a week just being like, all right, I listened to it. Like, I listened to it in this order. You listen to it in that order. Like, what's your takeaway? Let's compare notes. And like, there are times where me and Brandon will be like, oh, well, duh, that one has to be track 3. We both came to that conclusion, right? like it's like obvious, you know?
Yeah. And that's actually one of the things that like brings us to our closest, you know, area of like disagreement and like as close as we get to like full on arguments. We don't, Nate and I, we don't have like full on arguments, but that's one of the things that gets us as close as we get to it, which is like, dude, no, this song has to come after that one, man.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. But I, dude, even just if you just look at it from like even just like a storytelling perspective, get ready to ride the line design. Get ready, right? And then this track 2 is Black Starliner, which is the song that is all about riding Marcus Garvey's boat to Africa. So it's like, get ready now, get on the boat. Ja Pretty Face is just like, that's kind of more. That might be one of my least favorite songs on the album.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think
it's kind of a filler song.
Probably my least favorite song.
Pretty face. And another one that is absolutely nothing without the keys.
Yeah, it's true. That is a very synth forward song. You know, and then as you go through Naughty Dread taking over, and then at the end, you have 2/7 Clash and I'm Not Ashamed, which is basically saying like, this shit's all gonna happen. And it's coming, and we're not ashamed. We're not embarrassed of it. Like, this is, you know, and from a storytelling perspective, it makes sense if you flip the sides. I think.
Does. Yeah.
But I think
the original,
for a song perspective, I think that the way that it is, despite Get Ready to Ride the Line Design being possibly a stronger track 1 and possibly a stronger way to start it, I do think that it's still overall kind of a front-loaded album the way that it is. Like, the better side is probably side A, but so I think maybe that's why they did it, is they just were like, you know what, like side B has the stronger songs. We should just flip this shit. You know, like, you know, I don't know. But anyway, so those are my 3. How about you?
Okay, so I would say, I'm looking through it. So for sure, I think that my favorite song is See Them A Come.
Okay, nice.
Okay, that to me, that one rides shotgun with Get Ready to Ride the Lion to Zion. To me, this album is about 3 songs. It's See Them A Come, Get Ready, and 2/7 Clash. Those are the 3 that are just like makes everybody who are in the reserved seats stand up and get out of the seats and start moving around, and everyone just starts running in circles because they can't handle this track.
You're so right. This is such like See Them Come is such a good pick. You're so right. I think when I first got into this album, this was by far my favorite song. See Them Come.
You cannot resist. If you hear someone say, Jaja see them a come, you have to sing. Because I conquer. You have to sing. Yeah. You have to.
Yeah.
Oh my, you know, I think that those are the 3 songs that most possess that heightened ecstatic religiosity.
Yeah, I agree.
That we're identifying in this, where it's like the spirit takes you over. Like I just can't even, it's bigger. It won't fit in my body. I have to get the wiggles out, you know? And
he's specifically, what he's talking about, Jaja see them a come, a lot, and some of the later choruses, like he'll say like, with the baton, like with the baton or with a gun. He's talking about like the police essentially. He's talking about when you see the police coming and they're coming here to beat your ass, it's like, it's all good. Stand tall, stand with your head high, like, because we're going to fight the oppressors. We're going to get through this, basically.
And I conquer. Yeah. Which, in our piece by piece...
Man, this is such a good pick. I feel stupid not picking this song. This is a good one. This is a really good one.
Like you said, you're a generous guy. You're a giving guy. You can let me have one.
For you, you said the spine. The most important songs were what again? You said,
"See Them A Come."
Yeah.
Get ready.
Mm-hmm.
Ride the Line to Zion and 2/7's Clash.
Yeah, I agree.
I think those are the three that are like the spine of this album.
Yeah,
those are the peaks of the mountains as you see the horizon of this album. You know,
I agree. I don't want to front run your other picks though, because I have some stuff to say about the other ones. But yeah, so okay, I totally agree with you. I wasn't even thinking when I was picking favorite songs because you're right. See Them A Come is a massive highlight.
The way that the organ plays on beat 3, not on B3, but on beat 3.
That one also probably has the most prominent, best instance of like that Electric Rhodes piano too. It's like he's just dancing around that whole time.
He has a prominent melody in that thing that goes ba-doo-da, ba-da-ba, ba-ba-da-ba. Yeah, that's that electric piano. Which is like, what other roots reggae album has that?
Yeah, they don't do that really. It's like usually
which is
B3.
Another interesting thing. It's like if that was in if that was in the studio, why is it on all the other records?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, man, it's so beautiful in there.
Yeah.
I think another standout is Black Starliner Must Come.
Yes.
Okay, this is so you were talking about the various drum beats. Oh, by the way. The Steppers beat, See Them A Come.
Steppers.
Boom, boom, boom,
yeah.
boom, boom.
And it's fast Steppers too.
That's right. That's what gives it the pulse, you know? It's all about that Steppers beat, man. Now, Black Starliner Must Come. This is something that's really cool, and something that Sly Dunbar is sort of notable for, which is that he would periodically just invent a new beat. Just it's a non-standard reggae drum pattern, and he will never play it again on any other song. And he would do that sometimes, and this is one. Okay, the sort of like marching thing, you know, just along with that like minor key Aeolian mode, do 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 do.
Yeah, it's a very militant.
So nasty.
It's like a very militant. You're March.
Meekly wait and murmur not.
Yeah.
Meekly wait and murmur not.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's
such a good song.
It is kind of a one-off drum pattern, which is very interesting.
Yeah. He
it's something that's kind of like
marching
that.
thing.
It's close to a Steppers, but not quite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a non-standard reggae drum pattern because reggae drum patterns are highly standardized throughout the musicologically speaking.
Yeah.
But there are examples like this. And then I think, I'm not going to repick Lion to Zion and 2/7's Clash since you rightfully chose those.
Yeah.
So I'm saying See Them A Come, Black Starliner, and then my last one would be Pirate Days.
This is good. We picked the 6 correct songs, I think.
Yes, I think we did. Yes.
Yeah, this song rips too. God.
The Arawak, the Arawak was here first, and then boo-doo-bee, the little the synth in here, bing, 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 but bing, bing, bing. It's so catchy. It's such good music.
The only one that deserves an honorable mention and a shout out, because I think Job Pretty Face is the one that I don't think is like the greatest thing ever. It's the one I think I would skip over. Naughty Dread Taking Over, I like a lot. I like more than Job Pretty Face, but is not a standout for me. The only other like honorable mention, and I'm sorry to step on you while you're talking about Pirate Days,
it's all right. No.
But I do think that I'm Alone in the Wilderness deserves like
in the wilderness.
That is that's almost the first song I think of when I think of this album. Weirdly,
And they're all so good.
They're
But
all
yeah,
so good.
Natty Dread taking over, right? It's just like it has that feeling of like New Year's Eve,
Yeah.
like lampshades around people's heads and people
Yeah.
just blowing on the noisemakers
Yeah, exactly.
and the confetti's coming down. It's just like such like after hours party vibe.
Yeah, it does.
You know?
Yeah.
Natty Dread.
It's great. It is great.
Take it over. It's just like the entire ethos of the Rastafari movement just like boiled down. Like, okay, if you just had to put it down into one sentence, what would it be? It would just be Natty Dread, take it over. You know? Like that's the whole thing, man. It's just like we're taking over.
So if we picked our 6, which I think were the correct.
I'm not ashamed. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm not ashamed.
That song's so good.
Dude, okay, in this same interview, in that Roger Steffens interview, he tells this story about why he like how he knows in his heart that he's not ashamed and he will never be ashamed of his Rasta identity and how like rock solid he is about it. Basically, it's a story where he was leaving an event and he was pulled over on the road by these gunmen, these robbers, just freaking dudes who just wait in the jungle and just like on the road and just walk in front of your car with a bunch of machine guns and tell you to get out of the car and rob you, and possibly kill you. And they have him on the ground, him and Albert Walker, one of the other singers of Culture. They just have them on the ground at gunpoint, and one of them, and he's just like laying there, and he's just thinking, he's like, man, like, is this really it? Like, this is how I go out? Like, damn. And he's like, but you know what? He's like, hey, man, like my son, all the younger Rasta, like every other part of this movement, like they're going to carry it on, man. Like this shit is going to happen no matter what. He's just like, you know what? Like, I'm just so thankful that like, I was like part of this movement. Like I'm part of this, like I'm on the right side of history. I got to live my life this way. Like fine, whatever. And one of the gunmen asked him a question. He's like, oh, you praying, Rasta boy? Or something like that. And he's like, and he said out loud, he's like, as a matter of fact, I am. Yeah. And just the way that he talked, and he just started going off and like saying, like quoting Marcus Garvey and like quoting Haile Selassie and just like saying the conviction and like how intense he was, like made the gunman like back off and just like make them be like, all right, whatever. Man, we gotta get out of here. Just like take them out, and they just left. like, dude, we like, okay. This dude is too intense. We got to get out of here. Saved his life, basically.
Yeah.
And
it's like what I was saying earlier, where it's like kind of like when you're around someone with that much like conviction, you're almost kind of like, well, I kind of want to just like cover all my bases. Like maybe, maybe I don't kill this guy.
but he said he just knew from that point on. He's like, Jah has me. I am taken care of. Like. There is nothing to be ashamed of. And so there's this song, I'm not ashamed. Oh my God. It's so good. You can't fake this shit, man. You can't fake this. And check it out. How many of these songs, how many of them are about ganja?
That's a great point.
None of them.
Zero.
That doesn't mean they don't smoke ganja.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that they didn't sing songs about ganja later on.
How many of these are about the beach?
Yeah. How many are about the beach? Well, Pirate Days is sort of about stealing slaves from beaches and taking them to beaches. It's about beaches in that sense.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
It's not about hanging out at the beach.
No. We're trying to use this series to not just educate people about like this really great music that came out from this time period and from this scene, but why it has the urgency that it has, why it has the energy that it has, why it is the way that it is, because there's an underlying philosophy to it that I think people really brush off, right? And like, I'm not a Rastafarian, right? But you have to understand what it means to them.
Yeah.
Because that will unlock for you why it is the way that it is. Yeah, it's the context.
The whole context for this music. You know?
Exactly. And it puts the whole thing in a different frame of light, I think, as a music listener, which is that like, again, reggae is not about fucking
chilling out,
tiki drinks at the beach. It's not about that at all. Like, that's not what this is. Like,
it's not about, hey man, relax, good vibes.
It's not.
Like, it's literally like, I can't find from this period of time, from the early 70s to the early 80s, like all this roots reggae, all this Rasta reggae, I can't find a song that is what it means.
Yeah.
It isn't out there.
The thing that bothers me about the time we live in right now as it pertains to reggae music is that I feel like if people really took the time to fucking understand what Rastas and reggae musicians actually stand for, it would get so much play right now. They are anti-fascist. They are anti-racist. They are anti-colonialist. These are all philosophies that are so prominent right now and so important right now, and they're having their moment right now. And it's like, man, this has been happening. This has been happening. We've been seeing
there was music that encapsulated the way that I feel right now. If only that existed somewhere.
Yeah. So it really bothers me because there isn't another style of music or genre of music that is inhabited entirely by revolutionaries and revolutionary thought. There is no other genre, right? And so in this time where we're starved for we need revolutionaries, we need revolutionary thought, we probably need a revolution to happen to get us out of this fucking dire hole we find ourselves in. So for people to like look at reggae and almost like condescend to it, it's just like, dude, you're spitting on the feet of our heroes. These are fucking heroes, dude. Like these are the people we could be looking up to for inspiration in this moment. And you cast it aside because you don't get it. You don't understand it, right? Their convictions are for revolution and for justice are so deep. It's actually ingrained in their religion. It's actually like part of their religion. There's deep inspiration to be found from these musicians and from this music. Like there's deep, profound, important teachings in this music that could like help us right now.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that I experienced, and I know all sorts of other people who are reggae musicians and lovers of reggae that I've known and talked with, and including you throughout my life, which is that, you know, we are able, even though my life experience isn't the same as what is being sung about here, I am able to learn from the wisdom and find, you know, lessons and strength into it that I can, that I can take into my own circumstances.
You can absolutely metabolize it in your own way.
And if nothing else, which is a completely worthwhile endeavor, is I could maybe stand a chance at being an ally.
Yeah.
For someone else, because it is worthwhile. This to me is the greatest lesson of reggae in my life, which is just that it makes me aware that there are other brothers and sisters in this humanity who are suffering. And it makes me aware of that. You know, and I don't have to be one of them to be interested in helping them. This could be the message of another group of people of which I'm not a member, and I still care.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely.
I still am about their betterment. I don't need to be one of them. You know,
we should talk
it's
about.
Important.
It's really important. It's really important.
And you
and there's
can't
no getting around it.
This exactly.
Yeah,
how
the fuck do we talk about a song called Black Starliner without talking about this?
Exactly, Nate. Exactly. You can't understand this. Is what we've been harping on.
Yeah,
and we will continue to harp on it. You can't understand this shit without these bits and pieces.
Or a song called "Get Ready to Ride the Lion to Zion." How do we explain that? How do we even talk about that if we just ignore what he's fucking talking about? You know, like. I love this album. I've loved this album since I probably heard this when I was like 15 or 16 for the first time. Coincided with a very important time in my life when I was discovering, punk and, the fact that my punk heroes loved this so much only reinforced my belief that I was on the right path musically. I was hanging out with the right people. I was listening to the right shit. And I want to point out that Joseph Hill, he passed away. He was only 57 when he passed away. This was probably 15 or almost 20 years ago now. He passed away on tour with Culture. He died right before going on stage to play a show. He died like backstage in Berlin, I think it was.
Yeah.
And one of the things I had discovered this week that I was not aware of was that Culture is still together. They still perform. His son, Kenyatta Hill.
I was just talking about it. He in that moment, he was like, you know what? My son will carry on. Oh my God. I didn't even think about that.
His son, Kenyatta, took over lead singing duties in the band and now continues to this day to front Culture. They still play. Wow. They're on tour. And two of the guys that are in, because it's still a vocal trio too, and two of the guys are really old. I can't confirm if it's like these two or who it is, but it is like still his dad's band. He's fronting his dad's band. And you know what? Whenever that happens, I'm always kind of like, you know what? We'll be lucky if it's like still even like kind of cool. It could just be really lame. But I looked it up. I looked up Kenyatta Hill's Culture.
How does it sound? I didn't listen.
It's awesome. It is rad. He is doing he looks just like Joseph Hill. He sounds just like Joseph Hill. He's much younger though, so he's probably in his 40s or maybe early 50s. So he's like it's like spitting image. Like he looks like Joseph Hill, like from the 70s. It's wild, and he sounds like him too. Really great, super high energy, playing to like huge, massive crowds, mostly in Europe. No surprise there. That's where people actually like reggae still. But absolutely killing it, crushing it, like just carrying the torch forward from his dad still to this day, still playing. I looked up live videos of them playing 2/7's Clash and playing I'm Not Ashamed and playing all these songs. Just fucking, they crush it, dude. They crush it to the point where I'm like, I want to go see Culture now. Like, and I didn't even know I'd be able to say that at this point because Joseph Hill's been dead for a while now. But
that makes me happy to hear.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Let's go see him, man.
Yeah, we should. We absolutely should. How about you? Any final thoughts on this record?
Final thoughts. I got two quotes.
Okay,
two quotes by Joseph Hill. Mm-hmm. One is in response to the question, "What is reggae?" That's been sort of a theme that we've done so far, is just sort of getting an answer to that question from these different figures, because I feel that there is no one answer to that question. What is reggae and what isn't it exactly? But you could sort of get a picture of the truth when you get an answer from all these different figures who lived it and who created it. So for him, he said, quote, "If you should make reference to the days of ska, rocksteady, which between that and a combination of mento and jazz, give us a very live musical artistic artistry, or could be called a musical formula, which is now being called reggae. The way I see reggae, it's an extractum from the many hard messages of music, because even a progression could give you a message. Yes."
Wow.
End quote.
Wow. That's a meaty quote. There's a lot to chew on there.
Dude, Joseph Hill he's
a brilliant guy.
A highly intelligent person.
And also I watched some like video footage of him as well. He just seemed like really friendly and really nice and like very, very like approachable. He didn't seem like he was much more like modern than I think people probably would get the impression. Like he was
because
like a normal
from his music,
guy.
He
from
seems
his music,
like a tribal individual.
He wasn't.
But that's not what he was like. Yeah,
no,
right.
he was a very like worldly person. Yeah.
Second quote, he said, "Music is a thing we build out of nothing, you know, Rasta. Plenty people don't realize. Music is a thing we build out of nothing."
You know, to jump off that, something I read about him, and I watched a video of him. He was visiting like historical Israel and Palestine in like the 90s, and I saw this video of him there, and he was playing shows and stuff like that. And one of the things he pointed out was like music is like elemental, almost like air or water or something like that. And he said like even at a young age, I would just build my own musical instruments.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
And so, and there's
He would
video
just
of him.
make his own stuff.
He was sitting in like a circle with a group of guys, and they just like started grabbing stuff, like whatever they could find, and they just were like doing like a drum circle basically, and like singing and
he did it into his adulthood. I think people have forgotten that the guitar didn't occur in nature. You see what I mean?
Music is like an innate ability that we all have.
There's no piano tree.
Right.
we put this stuff together, just objects, and we smack them together and we make sounds. We make the music out of nothing, and that's where it comes from, you know? And we forget that. To harken back to what Marcus Garvey said about the importance of words. These three things, humans, language, and music, are mutually occurring phenomena.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you could say that we are language. We are music. Mm-hmm. You know? Like that is what makes us what we are.
Right. Yeah.
Like what's a human? It's the one that has language and music.
Right.
I want all of you naysayers out there I want you to know that I am aware that when I point out how there's no ganja songs on this, I do know that this is the exact same artist whose most famous song is International Herb. I do know that, okay?
That's funny.
And my point stands.
Yes.
You know what I mean.
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
and
so go listen to 27's Clash, everybody. If you don't like this, you're stupid, et cetera, et cetera. So Brandon and I would like to humbly invite you to our Patreon, patreon.com/blackmarketdub, where you could get free bonus episodes, bonus video episodes, where me and Brandon kind of shoot the shit about music, maybe what's going on in the world, maybe other stuff. You also get ad-free video episodes of playback of this episode, so no YouTube advertisements or anything like that.
You get a free copy of any album that we release on vinyl.
Join our Patreon, and when we put records out, if you send us your address, we're mailing you a record. And we have a record coming up too, so I mean, you're going to want to do that.
And if you can afford it, we appreciate it. We love it. It makes a huge difference for us. It changes our situation. It changes our life. It changes the degree to which we can make all this stuff and all of our music and put it out. And if you can't, that's okay. Keep enjoying until the money soon come to you.
We're also a band. All of our music is on Bandcamp at blackmarketdub.bandcamp.com. We have over 40 EPs of music that me and Brandon have produced together over there. Tons of really good stuff. Yada, yada, yada. Listen to 27's Clash. Listen to Black Market Dub. Listen to Playback. Do it all. Yeah. Brandon, any closing words for us?
Yes. What else can be said, mate? The Arawak was here first.
That's right. That is right. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Weed.